What technique or techniques do you teach, Kara?
I'm a certified teacher of Michael Chekhov Technique, certified through National Michael Chekhov Association. That's my primary approach. I am not certified in a couple of other things that I use a lot in my class, like Robert Cohen's approach to script analysis and Linklater vocal production and that sort of thing. Those are things I've studied enough to teach some of it, but Chekhov is my primary modality. I think Michael Chekhov is an extremely, the technique is an extremely immediate way to create shifts for the actor, to create, if you need to change something, if you're just on stage and you're falling out of focus, to quickly bring you back in. It's very physical, and it's something that my students, even though we study for years, they very quickly are able to take some particular thing of it and take it to their next audition, to their very next performance, right then and there. And I like that. I like being able to, when the director says, "What else you got?" You go, "I got something."
Got a whole bag of that right here.
I only need 2 seconds, so yeah. I think it's equal, and there are lots and lots of both stage and film actors who use it. It's different because the technique of acting for a huge house versus a camera that's in your face, very different. So all those rules apply, but yeah, you can use it in both very easily.
In your opinion, Carol, why does learning a technique matter?
I think it matters for actors because we are human and we're not always going to be on, no matter how talented, no matter how experienced. You're not always going to be there. You can't rely on hope and happenstance to get you there. You have to have something to fall back on. There are days when we go on stage or in front of the camera and we're on fire and it's just there and you don't even think about anything. And then there are days when you're on stage as Hamlet and you go and you realize you're making a grocery list in your head and you have to go, hold up, I need to come back. And the technique is what brings you back. You shouldn't necessarily be on stage or in front of the camera grinding on, my teacher said do this and then I do this at this point and this is, that's too much. But it's there for when you falter. It's there to help pick you up and keep you where you need to be professionally, artistically in that moment. Exactly. If you're thrown off your game for any reason, if you're thrown off your natural talents for any reason, the technique sort of helps move you back to where you need to be.
Once a technique is learned, is it necessary to continue practicing that technique?
To my mind, it's like any other discipline that you train in. Ballet dancers don't go, I know how to do second position now, so I never do it again. Of course, you're out there routinely practicing, trying classes, different teachers who may teach your technique, which leads us into, should you study more than one? Of course. There are things that are going to speak to you and things that won't, and that's okay. But what's cool is, while I'm absolutely the high priestess of Chekhov and I will proselytize to anyone, I always take something away from a different acting technique, from a different teacher. They'll say something and I'll be like, oh my God, that thing I've struggled with for years, I picked it up here. So always be learning. So yes, you should always keep doing it. Now, how long do you train before you go out there? Now, I'm a big proponent of you learn by doing. Now, the caveat to that is that I think you need to spend some time on the basics. You need to know what's my motivation and what all that stuff means, how to analyze a scene. But you can do that in a class. A single class can teach you that. You should have some basics, your acting 101 class, what have you, that might touch on a few different techniques. You should learn something about how to behave professionally in each of the scenarios, and there are books on that. There's a great book called An Actor Behaves. It's on my bookshelf, and every once in a while, even though it's kind of old now, every once in a while I'll be like, what did I do? Keep your mouth shut in that circumstance. Or also keep your mouth, open your mouth if you have to. But once you and you can probably do that even in a few months, even if you've never acted before. Once you do that, get out there. Now, be at your level. Don't send your tape to Mr. Spielberg, but go to your community theater, hit up SCAD and all the student films that you can get into just to have the experience. And meanwhile, you're building and you're continuing to learn and you're continuing to be in class. But there's nothing quite like being out there and failing big in person to make you go, now I got it. So.
I tell you get the gist of it. What do you think would make actors in Atlanta, just as a general as a market, better actors? And when I talk about the market in Atlanta, I'm mostly talking about film and TV.
I think because we've kind of become a hot spot, there's been a real influx of people who just want to be stars. I think you have to fall in love with the craft and be willing to be a day player for the rest of your life because you love it so much. And toward that end, you need to be studying somewhere, somehow, even if it's on your own. The other thing I think is a lot of people we have so many tools. You should be creating content, even if it's garbage. Make all the garbage, because eventually you're going to hit a gem. Eventually. Also, my understanding is what I hear from casting people and production people is they are looking through those things. So be out there doing it, getting used to it, failing, succeeding, all of that. But also be willing. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm making YouTube content or working at the community theater and saying one-liners for the rest of my life, and I'm cool with that. And if you can get really cool with that, it's gonna grow because you're gonna be dedicated and professional. And I think there's a perception. I don't think it's necessarily all true, but there's a perception that Atlanta actors are a little step down from West Coast actors or New York actors. And I'm not sure that that's true. I think people just aren't used to us, and we have a little bit of a different culture. But that means we got to work twice as hard to be thought of as half as good, that kind of stuff.
So why did you choose to teach? Why do you teach? What motivates you to teach?
Well, some of it's practicality. You got to make a living, and I want to make a living doing what I love, and so that's a way to do it. Once I started teaching, I think I have a little bit of a teacher's heart, sort of naturally. Once I started teaching, it's so exciting. Like, I always leave my classes as energized as my students do. Even if I'm like, when I'm heading to the studio, like, I gotta do this thing. By the time I leave, I'm amped up, they've inspired me, I learn from them. So it's a combination of the practicality of needing to make a little money at something I love, and also it's really exciting just to watch the light come on, or to struggle with a student and not have that immediate success with them and have to work and work and work on something, and then one day you or they kind of go bing, and you're like, how about this? And you're like, there it is.
Just do that 1,000 more times.
Yes, exactly. And they're like, what'd I do? And you're like, oh no. How do I describe what you just did? But yeah, it's exciting. I also am a director, and I really enjoy that. And so there's a lot of overlap between teacher and director. So yeah, it feels exciting to me, and it makes me a little cash. So.
There you go.
I think one of the things that I teach to my students a lot is you got to listen to what feels juicy to you. And I use that term for so many different concepts, but it's, yes, go take all the classes, but don't feel like you have to stay with the technique because it's the teacher in town. If it feels like drudgery, if it feels, don't stay with me if you're like, God, I hate this. When you're in a class with both the material and the teacher should excite you. It should feel juicy. It should make you go, ooh, get a little chill. And I think sometimes, especially younger actors, newer actors, don't trust that. And it's taken me a while. Like, I had to become kind of an old lady to go, I'm just not going to put up with situations that don't feel good to me. If they feel good, then I'm really willing to grind on them. So find what speaks to you and be open to that. Yeah, I think too many people go, well, this is where everyone's going to study, so I guess I have to go there. And it's like, no, you don't. Or you can find a different teacher in that technique if you like the technique but not the teacher. But listen to your intuition. Listen to the thing that goes, oh, that's exciting. Yeah. And I think too many people don't because they're so worried about doing it right. Yeah. That they don't. And I understand that. Been there many years. But yeah, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it.
Got it. What is your guilty pleasure, Kara? Or a guilty pleasure?
Oh, see, that's the thing. I'm a hedonist, so there's so many, although I don't feel guilty about them. Okay, here's one that sometimes people don't expect. Yeah. I love, and you know, people have television shows they love and they watch all the time. And I have several that I'll put on in the background of my life, just to have on and laugh and repeat the lines too. But my absolute favorite is Reba from the early 2000s.
Did not see that coming.
I absolutely adore it. Skip season 1, it's not as exciting. There's a Halloween episode in season 4.
This is an expert.
I'm telling you. So yeah, that's one of that people are like, really? You know, anytime someone thinks I'm intellectual, I'm like, let me tell you about Reba.
Cool.